Hi there, this is Mr. Tim. Thank you for joining us for another oral story time. Today we are going to be learning about Robin Hood, and we are going to be learning about the history of oral storytelling. Oral storytelling is the practice of telling a story instead of writing it down or reading it. It's been practiced by many cultures across history, and has been used to record the culture's histories, to tell stories, to teach morals, and served other varieties of purposes, as most literature does. Some stories had songs in them, other stories had poems and rhymed throughout, and other stories were simply just told without any sort of augmentation. Today the story will be told with some music, as well as me telling parts of the story and some artwork to accompany it by Don Ruth. So, without further ado, here is the story of Robin Hood. Robin Hood and Little John walking through the forest, laughing back and forth at what the other one has to say. Reminiscing this and that and having such a good time. Oodle-lolly, golly, what a day. Never ever thinking there was trouble in the water they were drinking, they just guzzled it down. Never dreaming that a scheming sheriff and his posse was watching them and gathering around. The Sheriff of Nottingham gave a bellow, and his men sprung from the trees and tried to pounce on Robin Hood and his best friend and most loyal companion, Little John. However, Robin Hood and Little John were too quick for the sheriff, and they quickly took to the trees. They were swinging from vine to vine, jumping from branch to branch, and they easily escaped the sheriff once again. For this was not the first time that the Sheriff of Nottingham had tried to capture the outlaw Robin Hood. For ever since the king went away, his brother Prince John was ruling in his stead. Prince John was a terrible ruler, and he raised the taxes, and he forced the peasants to work more than they were able to, and to pay more than they possibly could. For this reason, many of the people of Nottingham were forced into poverty and into sadness. However, Robin Hood was their light in the darkness, for he was renowned in the forest and in the area for stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. For there were many carts laden with gold that disappeared in the forest. And it was for this reason that the Sheriff of Nottingham hunted Robin both day and night, and with every hour he did not hunt him, he spent thinking, trying to find a way to beat the Robin Hood that haunted his nightmares. It was after this near miss in the forest that the sheriff knew he had to report to the prince and tell him his failure. He dreaded the moment, but he gathered up all of his courage and he went before the Prince John. And Prince John was not happy with him. "This man has been taking my money," bellowed the prince as the Sheriff of Nottingham told him the dreadful news. "I told you to capture this man with the greatest of haste," he screamed, a vein coming out of his forehead. The Sheriff of Nottingham bowed his head. "I'm sorry, my lord. I'm trying my best." But suddenly, the sheriff had an idea come to him. "My lord, mayhaps I have some men to help capture him." "Have some men? Why, I've already given you 20 men. Was that not enough to capture one man?" But the sheriff patiently explained his idea. "My lord, Robin Hood is known for his archery, and he's known for his need to compete in contests. Therefore, I say that we should throw an archery contest with a prize of gold. Yes, mayhaps," he pulled out of her leather sack, "this golden arrow that I had fashioned for just an idea." The prince looked down on him with a wary eye. This is not the worst idea that you've had. Very well, I shall allow it." And with that, the sheriff started planning the event. They were weeks out still, but he had signs posted all over the forest and the surrounding lands. He invited peasants from all over, noblemen from all over. He invited the greatest archers in all the land, knowing that Robin Hood would not be able to resist the draw of such a great contest. After a few weeks and many tireless nights of planning, the day finally came to the sheriff's relief. The horns rang on the day of the event, and the people began to stream in slowly but surely. The most dreadful contestants lined up and began. The first was the nobleman, while Piggy, demanding that he would not shoot his bow until the arrows were laid in this way and in that, and he had had his breakfast, which no one else had had to that point. Eventually he fired, and while missing the exact bullseye, he did hit the inner ring, scaring everyone, but he broke his nail and refused to continue the contest. The second was the sheriff, who pulled his bowstring back, let his arrow loose, and it struck the bullseye. The third was a blacksmith, who was feared for his strength, but in drawing his bow, which was smaller than he was used to, he snapped it in two. He looked around at the crowd, looked down at his feet, and trudged off, after having flexed his muscles for everyone. Next was the youngest contestant there. He, however, had forgotten his bow and was running dreadfully late by the time he realized it, so there was a vacant spot. No one knew where the young man was. And finally, what seemed like an old beggar man with a long beard and an eye patch and an old hat in rags, wobbling in on a cane. Everyone laughed seeing him, but he took his bow and his place at the mark, and, being of great eye and talent, shot his bow, and the arrow split the arrow of the sheriff in twain. At this, the crowd erupted in a great cheer, and the sheriff eyed the old man warily. Perhaps this was the Robin Hood in disguise. He would have to investigate further. He motioned for his guards, and they moved in. The next round came, and at the last was just the sheriff and Robin Hood. The sheriff drew his bow back, and once again fired his bow, and struck the bullseye dead in the middle. Now, there was nothing more impressive than splitting the arrow in two, so he pulled another arrow out of the ground, and shot his own arrow in two. Robin Hood was impressed at this, and so he plucked an arrow out of the ground, still disguised as the old man, and shot it high up in the air. He waited a moment, and plucked another arrow out of the ground, and he shot it again, and as he shot it, it split the first arrow in twain, and it slammed into the bullseye, splitting his arrow and the arrow of the sheriff in twain as well. The crowd cheered ferociously at the great feat that the old man had done, and that is when the sheriff motioned again to his guards, who quickly grabbed the old man, removed his cane, and pulled the cloak from him, and at that the beard fell from his face, and there stood Robin Hood in his famous brigand's outfit, and he smiled at the crowd, pulled another arrow from the ground, and shot yet another bullseye before the guards were able to catch up with him. They chased him around, and he motioned to another man in the crowd, who quickly threw off his disguise, and with that, Little John leaped from the crowd, blocked the guards, and Robin Hood and Little John once again escaped into the forest. But Robin Hood did not forget about his prize, and he stopped at the table where it was held during all the madness, and he plucked the arrow and took it back into the forest to melt it down and give it to the peasants in need. Robin Hood and Little John running through the forest, hopping fences, dodging trees, and trying to get away. Contemplating nothing but escape and finally making it. Oodle lolly, golly, what a day. Oodle lolly, golly, what a day. and that is just but one of the tales of Robin Hood, the great outlaw of Sherwood Forest. Surely you have heard others, for there are many, and maybe we will even tell others in story times such as this one. But I do hope you have enjoyed our time, and once again thank you to Don Ruth for the beautiful artwork and for filming the progression so that we may all enjoy it during this story time. Thank you all for joining us, and I will see you all very soon. Goodbye, friends!